push it slightly. Push forward. Okay. Okay, huh?
Testing, testing. Is this on?
Yep, it's on.
Testing. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. There are several seats in front. Yeah. And yes, those who are still standing, you might like to come forward and fill up the seats in front.
Is he ready?
I don't know. I thought
We are online already.
we are live. No, don't. Hold on. Wait.
Cannot change already.
Do we have some more seats in front? Maybe the people have just arrived, still fill up the seats in front.
Black.
Please fill up the seats in front. Thank you very much.
introduction, but still we have to follow procedures. So can Dr. Chee take a seat? All right. Hello, my name is Wong Soo-Yi. I'm the Assistant Treasurer of the SDP. Welcome to the launch of the book, Never on Bended Knees by Chee Juan. Perhaps before we start the book launch, shall we all stand in 1 minute silence for Corporal First Class NS Aloysius Pang and all the other fallen sons of Singapore who had paid the ultimate price in their service to the country. Okay, thank you. Once again, thank you everyone for coming on this Saturday afternoon when you should have better things to do like your Chinese New Year shopping. All right, instead you have chosen to spend your time with us here at this launch. I will start this launch by reading out a synopsis of the book, Never on Bended Knees. This collection of observations and thoughts on Singapore over the last 2 decades by Chee Juan adds crucially to a growing narrative of Singapore which varies from the official perspectives perpetuated by mainstream media. More importantly, it shows a side of Singapore which had hitherto been camouflaged by a glittering economy, sophisticated urban skyline, and tightly crafted state narrative. Dr. Chee goes behind the facade of Singapore and examines the factors which had made the city so economically successful for the last 5 decades, and highlights the longer-term implications of such factors which do not augur well for the future of the nation. He argues fervently that fresh and decisive leadership is critical for Singapore's continued prosperity. Such leadership needs to be inclusive without being indecisive, and compassionate without being defensive or bureaucratic. It needs to take account of a community's political rights, something which forms the basis of a good democracy. This approach will bring about organic creativity from citizens, which is essential to build an innovative economy for a new world and help Singapore survive the many disruptions which will be upon us in the years ahead. The writing had been on the wall for many years, and even as Dr. Chee kept sounding the watchman's rattle, he concludes, some Singaporeans rationalize that we are a pragmatic people, uninterested in the airy-fairy notions of democracy. I have spent the better part of my life persuading Singaporeans otherwise, and I will continue to do so for as long as Providence beckons. Those who know better and those who care, even if we are at the moment outnumbered, must remain stout. We must not yield, and we must not kneel. Instead, we must stand up like men and women with all our transgressions, fears, and imperfections. We must stand up and reach for the cage of oppression and rattle it with all our might. And we cannot do this on bended knees. It now leaves me to call upon Dr. Chee to talk more about his book, The Whys and the Wherefores. Dr. Chee.
Thanks, Chee. Just a few housekeeping matters. There are a few more seats out here in front of you. Those of you standing up would like to seat. Please come to the front. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here today. Second of all, I do apologize for the bit of confusion for the change in venue when the Lifelong Learning Institute just very suddenly cancelled my reservation. As I've said elsewhere, this is not the first time that something like that has happened. It's almost like an expected situation. The one event that stands out in my mind is when, just prior to one of the elections, we had reserved a venue and to announce our campaign. And then all of a sudden, one day I got this call from this hotel saying that, oh, we cannot go on with your event. And we had said that we've announced this already and we cannot change the venue anymore, and we hadn't got into a very deep-seated discussion about this matter. Then in the end, the hotel manager relented and said, okay, I tell you what, can you guys all come by the back door of the hotel? And said that we'll have people to greet you at the back door. Some things in Singapore never change. Which gives me the perfect segue into my presentation today, which is all about change. And I'd like to start this off by highlighting a few quotes from our country's leaders. This minister says, what we need is a certain shift in orientation, a readiness for change. Another one insists, Singaporeans can be the agents of change rather than waiting for the system to change. A third one proclaims, major changes are afoot and it is time to adapt. Here's the stark truth. The ministers are right. These are 4 words that you never thought I'd ever say. I thought I'd never say. But it's true. Change is upon us, whether we like it or not. And change we must. But any Singaporean with a pulse would have figured out that word and deed of the PAP is as similar as chalk and cheese. This brings to mind what Homer, the Greek poet who wrote the Iliad, said, hateful to me is that man who hides one thing in his heart and speaks another. Wise words. Either that, or what the other Homer said. Now, to demonstrate this do as I say but not as I do mentality of the government, let me focus on 3 critical areas that will determine the viability of this country as we head into the future. The first is the economy. While Mr. Heng exhorts us to change, the Committee on Our Future Economy, the CFE, which he leads, came up with a report that was essentially a rehash of all solutions which have been tried and found wanting. Now, it's just not me saying this. I want you to listen to what economics professor Dr. Linda Lim from the University of Michigan had said.
What the CFP doesn't do is not address the question of why all the previous plans and committees did not succeed in creating a self-sustaining economic model, and why you're continuing with more of the same. I mean, essentially, if you've been reading this, they're saying the same thing in different words.
Every 6 or 7 years, the government comes up with an important sounding report that promises to transform the economy. It was the Strategic Economic Plan in 1991. Then it was the Committee for Singapore Competitiveness, 1997, Economic Review Committee, 2003, Economic Strategies Committee Report, 2010, and then the latest one, the CFE report in 2017. All liberally employing buzzwords like innovation, entrepreneurship, knowledge-based economy, as if merely repeating these words will somehow magically transform our economy. In the meantime, hardly anything has changed. Labor productivity has remained anemic for decades despite tens of billions of dollars spent to improve the situation. Our economic growth has, in the words of the Prime Minister himself, maxed out as we struggle to hit 2% GDP growth. And even the US has seen 4% growth in recent times. And we're still just as dependent on foreigners to drive our economy. We're still running, for all intents and purposes, a centrally planned economy with the Prime Minister's wife at the helm. We're still effectively a glamorized outpost for foreign multinational corporations. Now, undergirding all this is our education system. Now, I don't have to tell you that whether we are prepared for the challenges tomorrow depends very much on how we prepare our students today. Education Minister Chee himself admitted that our education has been found wanting as it produces workers who, and I quote, do not think out of the box and lack the daring do to push boundaries, unquote. He called our students to take risks and chong. He then promptly demonstrated this bravado and to push boundaries by doing nothing. When he finally roused himself to make change, he said that his ministry would use achievement levels instead of T-scores to grade our PSLE primary 6 students. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this subject, this is akin to applying Mopico on a cancerous malignant tumor. And get this, the switch over will take place only in 2021. In the meantime, we're still stuck on the exam-oriented, information-regurgitating type of education system, when the world has already gone headlong into experimentation with artificial intelligence. The third area that desperately needs change is our political system. We have, however, a new PAP leadership that possesses neither the vision nor the courage to implement changes to the way that Singapore is governed. You have a Prime Minister that continues to drag to court everyone and anyone by whom he feels threatened. Tragically, even our institutions of higher learning are getting in on the act. It's supposed to be the crucible of intellectual debate, of freedom of thought. NUS and NTU have recently threatened legal action against the media for reporting negative comments made by its former staff, by their former staff. This unwillingness to reform the autocratic one-party top-down political system has a pernicious effect on our country. A study done by the Institute of Policy Studies found that nearly 60% of young Singaporeans believe that emigration is inevitable. Let it sink in for a little while. 60% of our youngest Singaporeans feel that emigration is inevitable. More saliently, researchers find that a major reason that younger Singaporeans are emigrating in such high numbers has to do with the lack of political freedom in this country. academic Dr. Yap Mui Teng of the LKY SPP, this LKY School of Public Policy, observed that helplessness and fear in the face of an overpowering political and power structure are what drive emigration. But instead of addressing the problem, the PAP simply replaces Singaporeans who leave by opening the floodgates to foreigners. What does that do to this country, to this identity of Singaporeanness? Be ready for change, Heng Swee Keat tells us. Be change agents, Chan Chun Sing says. If ever there was a word that was bastardized by the PAP, this one is it. Change. Without change, we are doomed to a painful decline. And the signs are as plain as your minds will allow you to see. But if there is going to be change in this country, it will have to take all of us to commit to bringing it about. And that's why your being here today makes all the difference. Your support provides me the sustenance to continue this long fight to reform our governance. As I said in my video, writing books is an honest way, my way of making a living. More than a quarter of a century ago, when I was sacked from the NUS, I was in a tough spot. In order to stay on in Singapore, I had to find some way of earning a living and putting food on the table. But I couldn't find another job, partly also because I felt that then I could not dedicate my time to doing political work on a full-time basis. So I thought of writing, publishing a book. But those of you who are writers, you know that it's impossible to survive in Singapore because publishers, basically they give you a 10% cut of the retail price of your book, if that. And because Singapore's market is small, it is really, you can well imagine how impossible, nigh impossible it is to make a living just by writing books. And so when I wrote my first book, Dare to Change, I had to cut out all the middlemen, so to speak. The publisher, the distributor, and even the bookstore. So I did all the writing, the editing, and the layout. I got a friend of mine to actually help me to design the cover, approach printers, and then go out on the street to sell it. And that way I kept the major portion of the sales for myself. At that time, my kids came along, and when they were little, I wanted them to know the work that I had to do to go into making some money. And they were good helpers at that time. They helped me to collect money, count the number of books, principles of accounting, 001. The elections are also another period where sales pick up. So whatever I make has to last me until I write the next book. And this has been going on for the better part of the last 25 years. So now you know how I make a living. Many of you, I'm sure, have wondered quietly, how does this Chee survive all these years? So now you know. But there's a more serious matter about this, my writing and selling books on a full-time basis. And it was raised by Minister Grace Fu during the by-election. And she had pointed out in public, saying, he has not held a full-time position. Maybe you should not elect him as your MP. I don't want to get personal about these matters, but there is a bigger subtext which speaks to the issue of our society and how it's organized. And that has to do with this whole notion that somehow, if you have this full-time job like the ministers, and have the kinds of salaries like the ministers, then you are good. Then you deserve it. And if you don't, then you're not like one of them. And it's not just what she says. Edwin Tong, right, says that you couldn't live on a $50,000 a month salary. Ng Eng Hen will tell you square in the face that it's a bargain for what you're paying him. Now, I want you to think about this. You put them all together. What they're saying is that they're deserving of their pay, of their salaries, and you must pay them that. Because it's meritocracy. Impliedly, what they're saying is that those of you who don't make this kind of salary don't deserve that kind of acknowledgement financially. This is a problem that is going to rear its ugly head more and more in today's society. Let me draw this analogy for you, this comparison for you. Take my book, for instance, versus the book that Mr. Goh Chok Tong just published. I think it's called Tall Order. That's right, Tall Order. It's sold everywhere. I hear that it's in petrol kiosks as well. When you walk into Cheers, it's there, right? And then he gets all the publicity, you know, pre-launch publicity. The newspapers all interview him and so on and so forth. He gets to do his launch anywhere and everywhere he likes. For me, just even wanting a venue is difficult. Right. So, and when they claim that they sell thousands of it, are you surprised? And then when they say that, hey, look, by comparison, Chee's book, nowhere to be seen. I just want to draw this comparison to you. If I had the power, if I was in a position of power, I could say that my book is not worth $30, it's worth $300, right? And that every citizen of Singapore must read it because it's for the nation's good.
Like Adolf Hitler.
And then I'll tell you that it's #1 on New York Times bestseller list. Whether it's true or not is another matter. And then I say every citizen has got to buy one copy. I'll take it from your CPF. But this is the point that I'm trying to make. When you talk about meritocracy, it's a system whereby people, more competent people, people with merit, get ahead, get to climb up the ladder faster, right? It's only fair. You have more talent, you go up faster. What they don't tell you is that merit are the good qualities that the people who are in power and who possess influence say that they possess. This is a huge problem, not just in Singapore, but worldwide. That's what you're seeing. The pushback, the effects right now going on in the US with Donald Trump's presidency, with Brexit, in the UK, in Europe, in Italy, in France, in Brazil. People are getting tired of the elites keep on telling them that I possess, we possess all the qualities. That's why you should pay us. You know your place. Doesn't it sound so familiar here in Singapore? My book is just a microcosm. I just want to show you, demonstrate to you how unfair this process can be, how unfair such a system can be. And if we are not going to start declining as a society, we had better do something about it. And when I'm not selling my books, my waking moments, they're devoted to helping with the work at SDP. It's not possible to plan and organize the operations for a party on a part-time basis. Not if you're working for a party like the SDP. We have planned a year-long program of elections-related activities, and I cannot see how we can pull this off if I couldn't dedicate myself full-time to the task. As much as I talk about selling books, writing books as a form of survival, there is this one other part, a more important part in me, that wants you to read the book because of the content in it. Like any other artist, filmmaker, they want you to appreciate their work. Musician wants you to hear the music and fall in love with it. A comedian even wants you to laugh at the jokes. The engineers want you to marvel at their product. I too want you to appreciate this book for the contents in it. That somehow I can reach out to you. That I can stimulate some discussion, some debate, and encourage my fellow citizens to think critically. It is the prime medium through which I subject my thoughts to the intellectual grinder and extract from it reasoned arguments. It is through this process that I do my bit to help draw up an alternative program for this nation. So I hope you tell all your family and friends about this publication. To those of you who can't be here today, but if you're watching it on Facebook, which I believe is going out live, you can purchase it online. But if you prefer, you can still come down to this office and get a copy. I'll be here for the better part of the afternoon. I'll post the online link and the address in the comment section below. Again, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you for your continued support. And may the spirit of change abide deep in us as we continue this long struggle for a better and democratic Singapore. Thank you. I'll just leave a few minutes aside to see if you have any questions or any queries, or if you find anything that you want to discuss from the book. Please, I'll be more than happy to take them for a few minutes.
Is there any idea from the opposition parties to combine together from what the last meeting you had with Chee?
Yes, for those of you who can't hear, the question is there any other, I guess, steps, ideas in terms of the opposition coming together? We've made it very explicit the last time when we met with the other parties and Dr. Tan Cheng Bock was present, and we said we really, our role was just to bring people together. We have the space here and to facilitate some discussion. And the other opposition parties agreed that to ask Dr. Tan to take the lead in this initiative, in this endeavor. And our position remains unchanged. We continue to be in touch with him and to see if he would just take the next step and bring the opposition together. We're still months away, and I think things may still develop, things may still change, and we're just hopeful as we continue to consolidate our gains all with that single-minded purpose of making sure that we are successful at the next elections and to bring some semblance of democracy and diversity in Parliament when it next convenes after the next elections. Yes?
Yeah. What chance is there of a repetition of Operation Cold Storage? Is there a big chance of that ever happening again? It worries me.
Yes, I mean, certainly the law is still there for the government to exploit. My own thinking is that times have changed. We've come too far for it to be invoked, and I'm talking about, you were talking about the arrest and detention of opposition leaders and members. I could be very wrong. You'll never know when politicians get desperate. But my own thinking, my own calculation is that something like that is a thing of the past. But whatever it is, we've got to send a message. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is what we do. And we're here to stay. We're not leaving Singapore. This is our country. And one day, we're going to see democracy come to our shores. Yes, ma'am.
Singapore is in a very, very bad situation in every sense of the word. Singapore is not controlled even by the government. So what's Singapore? Because this is a very important strategy for some group that is controlling the world. So we are in very, very, very bad shape.
You know, the
The roots, we have to go
Yeah,
to the roots. Even
yes.
all of you opposition party, do you know that the Singapore government bought the most poisonous canister for Israel? Why? Why do they have to buy this canister? So do you know they're talking about this, the next election, maybe they reduce they want to change the way of voting, not the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
So all these things, the opposition now must come together as one force, because there is deeper, so much deeper, that you all have to address.
I think the and I've said this before. Yeah, it's. I really think how the greatest damage that's been done is how we've been inculcated with the view, or rather the fear, that somehow if we change anything, the whole country is just going to go up in flames.
I was on Facebook, one Malay lady, no way, no for that decision, because now Singapore is so safe,
Sure. Yes. Yes.
Is
And
that
that's
the mentality?
yes. And that's the way that the PAP has been wanting to put it out, right? But we know better. We know better. You've seen what the change has been like in other countries, right? Whether the ruling party stays or goes, if there's a change in ruling party, the bulwark of society, of civil society, is still the civil service, right? What we do is there's a change in the ruling party. Politicians then set the direction, right, of the country, and civil society continues to function. Everyone continues to have public transport, things still run, electricity is still there, right? Your housing is still there, but the emphasis, right, on whether it's social assistance, or whether it's our economic plan, or whether how we prioritize our budget, all this will then be taken over and prioritized.
Singaporean culture is me and the family. They don't care about anything. That's the problem.
And
How
I
to
think,
wake them
yes,
up.
I cannot disagree with that. So, but it's very ingrained in our culture. But this is where we've got to take the steps.
One by one, I answer to all these bloody Singaporeans.
We will take, we have been taking steps to making sure that something like that changes.
No need to be polite.
we have at least social media now. And you know, I look back even just 10 years ago when JBJ, Jeratnam was still alive. You compare to the situation now. That was
Without
the
him,
darkest,
there was no change. It's because
that was
of
one of the
him.
darkest
That's
moments.
why we have some hope.
When whatever you say, whatever you did, we were at the mercy of the state media. And it was so difficult to get the word out, and he had such a tremendous amount of difficulty in trying to raise funds. Right? So much so that one day, you know, he called me up and I went to his small little office at Northbridge Road, Northbridge Center. And at that time I was selling my books already, and he asked me, said, how can you do it? And I told him, look, you've got to get people to help you rather than go to the bookstore, and by the time you get your money, it's not worth, it's not cost effective anymore. And so he started printing writing and printing his own book, Make It Right, and started going down the streets to sell. And even then, he had such a hard time trying to raise funds to pay off his debt. Just imagine if he was alive today, he would have at least had Facebook, social media to help him along. So the point is right now that we've come a long way. Let's not keep looking at that the cup is half empty. The cup is half full, and it's continuing to fill. We will get there one day. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. But the work is cut off before us. We have to get at it. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what are what you can about the opposition, and in particular the SDP, the war plans for the next year?
Funny you should bring that up, because shortly from now, we will start the process. Look, the talk is that it could be any time at the end of this year to maybe the beginning of next year. We cannot take our chances, right? If it calls for a snap election, you don't want to be caught out and say, hey, we're not prepared. So the SDP, we started planning this whole process middle of last year. We started getting everybody together, and it takes time, right? And we're going to make the announcement very soon for a year-long campaign in the lead-up to the next GE, because it really takes time for our message to get through and to sink into our voters. And all these things take a tremendous amount of effort. So please be on the lookout. In very shortly, we will tell you of our plans. Make yourselves available, because democracy is not a spectator sport. Right? You're not going to be able to sit on the stands and watch us as if we were in a football match with the PAP, and then you just cheer on. No. All of us here must roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty, so that we can begin to facilitate this process and making sure that change comes. Yes.
Chee, I'm not trying to push you against the wall and get you to commit yourself, but do you really believe that Dr. Tan Cheng Bok is sincere as an opposition after 26 years as PAP MP? He turns on his master?
I've spoken with Dr. Tan, in private, and I believe he is. I believe Singapore is, more than anything else, embedded in his soul, as is the situation with all of us. Otherwise, you wouldn't do what you do for this country. But whatever happens, I think the opposition as a whole needs to realize the hopes and aspirations of the people. And one of the hopes, one of the aspirations is to see a more coordinated, an opposition that's just not a ragtag team. An opposition that has a viable alternative program for this country. If you say that the PAP has gone off course, right, has lost its moral bearings, then we have to get it back. How are we going to do it? What is it that we want to do to get back on this track? Right? That the government essentially serves the people. But right now, it just looks as if we've gone so far off track that the PAP sits right on top and tells us that they are good, that they're exceptional, and all of you don't have a choice but to support us. That is just not what it has become. That is just not what it should be, I beg your pardon. And I believe, coming back to your question, that anybody that throws a hat into the opposition's ring is more than welcome, and I appreciate what Dr. Tan is doing, and hopefully we will be able to work together in a more coordinated fashion.
He got 37 million in his bank. He's an opposition.
I don't want to comment on individuals, you know, but I say again, look, there is hardly any point for us looking back. We've got so much that we need to do going forward. Right? We've got to discipline ourselves, steel ourselves, so that we can carry out the work ahead. And as I have said many times before, we look to all of you, right, to make sure that this process goes forward. I can only speak for the party that I am with. I cannot speak for the rest. And this much I will tell you, that the SDP is committed going forward. We have said that it's what our vision is. We have laid out, if you look at some of those posters to your, on the right, you will see that we've clearly put out what our values are. And it's based on these values that we've crafted all our policies so that they can be a coherent whole. Because I believe that anyone, any party who doesn't believe in anything will fall for everything. And this is that point that we emphasize so much. Our core values as a party and the program that we put out in the hopes that one day we can get into parliament in majority numbers, that we can form the government and effect our plan. Yes?
So, got more light-hearted question to ask.
Sure.
You used to do Facebook live streams and stuff like that. Yeah, but that has died down significantly in the recent years. Will you be doing live stream again? Because there's not many young people down here, and I think that may be due to lack of interaction with young people.
Yes,
Will you be doing more live streams?
Definitely. I think this thing has gone out on Facebook Live, but I think you're talking about the impromptu, chit-chat. We're going to continue to do that, but I'm almost afraid to say that now, even as we start using Facebook, the millennials have moved on and use now Instagram, and I understand that videos on it will last, what, 30 seconds maximum, right? 1 minute? Well, believe me, it's a real task in trying to get a message across, but we'll certainly try. I'm just reminded of this saying. A politician once said, if you want me to make an hour speech, I will, if you want me to make a 15-minute speech, right, I will need a day's preparation. If you want me to make half an hour speech, I'll make 3 days preparation. If you want me to make a 1 hour speech, I will need probably a day. But if you want me to just make a speech that's 3 hours, I'm ready right now. So, trying to craft your message and getting it into the period, into a short period of 1 minute, and you know, that's a skill set that we're continuing to learn.
But on YouTube, now you can live stream and then also get monetization by getting super chats. So,
and maybe pranks one of the colleagues so you get more views and making sure that the traffic is there. But shall we're certainly looking into it, and we're trying all different ways, and input from you, from your generation, that's hugely important. Okay, come and help us. So I think your hands up.
Regarding what this young man has said about social media and posting your blogs and videos online, I think it's heartwarming and heart-wrenching at the same time. Heart-wrenching because many Singaporeans do not know how to appreciate it. And for one thing I know is the Singapore police force in Singapore is very rapid at arresting people who make freedom of speech online. They have not been rapid and quick to respond to real criminals like murderers, rapists, all this, but they are quick at arresting people who make freedom of speech. I'm sure you know about the online citizenship editor Chee and Mr. Costa. They were arrested by the police for making some remarks about the government. So I would like to say this. Does the police in Singapore, do they take care of the people, the citizens, or do they take care of the government?
You know, it's a very sad commentary when the government, Prime Minister, takes on citizens for airing their views online. And as I said, you know, going forward, this is something which I think is going to hugely damage the process of us going to the future. And it's not something which I think we should take. We need to. I'm glad that somebody like Mr. Leong Zihian and the rest of them are fighting back. I think that's important. But as far as SDP is concerned, believe me, we'll explore all ways, all avenues of making sure we reach out as much to the public as we possibly can. So please help us do your part. When you see some of our posts, share it as widely as you can. Yes, sir.
Sir, this may sound big, but you taught us to dream big. What happened is Mahathir really happened here. Okay? Do you have any safe net to prevent those people who are supposed to be held accountable for, prevent them from running away? They may have everything transferred out before they came in. Even property, they also don't want.
Yeah. You know, in the world of today, right, when we're so interconnected, you know, it's hard for individuals to remain incognito, right? And it's important that for any new incoming government in Singapore or elsewhere, number one priority is to ensure a sense of continuity, of stability, right? And not so much in terms of how are we going to make sure that this individual or that individual does not abscond, right? I'm not saying that's not important. What I'm saying is to make sure we continue to assure the people that the first priority of any new government is to ensure continuity, make sure that things continue to run very smoothly, even as changes take place, even as new policies are implemented, and they will have to be implemented gradually and in phases. So, you know, I do want to take note of this whole idea that there will be cataclysmic, volcanic change if ever believe me, I think the opposition is much more level-headed than just to make sure that all hell breaks loose just because we become the government and we just go on this vindictive, vengeful streak about taking revenge. No, I think the priority is still for the nation and to make sure that everything continues on for the people as they expect us to. Anyone else? Yes, Alex.
Possible not to use the word opposition party, alternative party.
I've heard that many times, and you're right. You're right. I think, you know, the whole idea is for us to present an alternative, and we have. We made it this point over and over again, and that's why we've made sure that we keep saying that we have an alternative vision. We have an alternative policy, whether it's in healthcare, education, the economy, our population, and on down the road. We want to be known, you're right, as an alternative to the PAP. We'll strive to do something more. It's just a habit that's deeply ingrained in us. And our position seems to be been stuck in our minds. Yes, Corinne.
I was looking at the things happening in the US, and they have a whole bunch of rules. Would there be any insurance that in Singapore we are pushing for that instead of vesting the power into one person alone?
Yeah, I think the US system is very different from, say, the parliamentary system, right? But essentially, it is just based on this different branches of government. You have the executive, you have the legislature, and then you have the judiciary. And I think what is most important is really the guarantee that every 4 or 5 years, right, there will be an election. Not only that, there is a guarantee that the media is allowed to function without the interference of the government, right? And the third is to ensure that there's a guarantee that the people continue to be able to exercise their freedom of speech, assembly, and association. These are fundamentals. You remove any one of them, you come to a situation like in Singapore. The PAP is control of all the levers, and that's hugely damaging to the democratic system.
But one journalist questioned, you know what, and then she got sacked a year.
Yeah, that happened, yeah. There have been a few cases already. I want to, again, express my thanks to all of you for coming down. I just hope that this will not be the last time that I see you. In a month from now, there'll be another occasion where we can meet. I hope to see all of you again then at that time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience and for tolerating the crampedness of the space, but I think you know you should direct your unhappiness to the relevant authorities. Dr. Chee will be signing books over here, so yes, perhaps you can have a seat while you wait for your turn to get your autograph. In the meantime, there'll be refreshments served outside of this room. So help yourself to the refreshments while waiting to have your book signed.
Okay.